My boyfriend is going on a week-long vacation with his female best friend, and he's telling me that while he's there for 8 days, he and her are going to be sharing the same bed. And right now, I am so distraught over this information, because right now, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 6 months. During this time, we haven't really had any major conflicts, and he hasn't given me any reason not to trust him, besides having a lot of straight female friends. I really wish this didn't bother me at all, but it does a little, especially because I've never been able to maintain any friendships with straight men due to them eventually wanting something more. About a month ago, we were discussing plans for his birthday, which is next week, and it's right then that he let me know that he would be out of town then, because he would be vacationing with his best friend, who is this girl he was very close with in high school. And mind you, at this point, he had never mentioned her before. She lives in an island in the Mediterranean, and he is going to visit her for about 8 days. He showed me photos of her, and she is absolutely gorgeous. I'm generally fairly confident in my looks, but I'd be delusional to pretend that she isn't objectively more attractive than me. So, not wanting to seem controlling, I said, cool, that's totally fine. But I asked him for one thing. He cannot share a bed with her. Well, he acted like he didn't understand why this would be an issue. He told me that if it was me, he would have no problem with me sharing a bed with a straight male friend. I told him that while it's easy for him to say that, being that I have no straight male friends, I highly doubt he would be 100% cool with me sharing a bed with some 6'2" male model looking guy for a week. But even though I made that point, he still disagreed. We went back and forth some more, and I thought we came to a consensus that while he didn't understand my concern, he respected me enough to not sleep with another woman. But I was completely wrong. I was going to ask him if he had any other romantic or scandalous history with said friend, if you know what I mean. And before I even finished the question, he said to me, I know what you're gonna ask. I don't know if we're gonna be sharing a bed, but probably. So, knowing how he likes to avoid confrontation, this likely means yes. Anyways, he did at least tell me that they have no history other than being platonic, which I guess will somewhat put me at ease. And right now, I honestly just don't know what to think. I don't even know if it's worth bringing up this topic again with him, because I don't think there's anything he could tell me to make me believe he won't cheat on me. He's leaving in 2 days, and right now, I'm seriously at such a loss, and I just don't know what to do. Okay, this is insane to me. This guy seriously is gonna go to the Mediterranean and spend time with his hot friend and be like, yeah, we're gonna share the same bed together. Like, what is he doing? Does he not realize he has a girlfriend right now? Like, he really should know that that is not appropriate behavior for like a best friend. Like, I have best friends who are female as well, and I could not even imagine sharing the same bed as them. That is insane behavior to me. Like, that is a massive red flag, and that is not a good look. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be making a much bigger fuss about this. Him spending 8 days in the same bed with this hot lady from the Mediterranean, that in my opinion is so uncalled for, and there is absolutely no reason for you to put up with that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for announcing my pregnancy at my best friend's wedding, which I only did in the first place because she announced her engagement at my wedding? Because right now, my friend is incredibly angry, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm a 24-year-old female, and I recently discovered that I'm expecting my first child. My best friend, who we will call Laura, is 23 years old, and I've shared every significant life moment with her since we met in college. I got married 2 years ago to Laura's brother, and at my wedding, Laura announced her engagement to my brother during the reception. I was genuinely thrilled for her. I've always thought of Laura as a sister, and now we truly were, and I really didn't mind at all that she shared her big news. It felt like our joys were intertwined. Well, last weekend was Laura and my brother's wedding, and it seemed like a beautiful circle of life moment. Throughout the wedding and reception, a few close friends began noticing that I wasn't drinking, and they all started whispering guesses about my pregnancy. It felt like my news was already halfway out there, so after the speeches, I made a toast. I expressed my deep happiness for Laura and my brother. Then, feeling the moment was right, and following the precedent that she had set at my wedding, I decided to share that I was expecting. And after a handful of hugs and congratulations, I feel like the celebration shifted back to Laura and my brother. Now, I thought Laura would be excited, but instead, she seemed upset. She pulled me aside after the toast and expressed that she felt that I had chosen her special day to make a personal announcement, just to overshadow her celebration. Now, this reaction stunned me, especially since she made a similar announcement at my wedding, which is a moment that I embrace wholeheartedly. I was happy to share in her happiness. years. Laura has been distant ever since, and even my brother hasn't spoken to me since the wedding, and I'm now basically left questioning my decision. I thought that since I didn't mind sharing my special day, she would feel the same way. Our mutual friends, on the other hand, are divided. Some think that it was a sweet continuation of sharing life's milestones, while others, alongside with Laura, feel that the timing was completely inappropriate. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. The way that Laura's reacting to this, in my opinion, is super hypocritical. If somebody announced their engagement at my wedding, I think I would lose my mind. Like, that is so inappropriate, it's not even funny. She literally took away from your big day, and she made some big announcement that shifted the focus over to her. So how on earth could she even be upset that you did the same thing? Like, she literally did this herself at your wedding. Like, seriously, what is going on? If she didn't want it to happen at her wedding, then she shouldn't have done it at your wedding. That's my honest opinion on that matter, and seriously, it's her own fault that this happened. Like, it really seems like you two are supposedly sisters only when it's convenient to Laura, especially on a big day like somebody's wedding. Like, I don't care how close I am with somebody, I'm not about to make some kind of like major announcement at anybody's wedding for any reason. That is messed up, and it takes away from the people getting married. So no, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I think what she did in the first place was very rude, and if she doesn't like it, then she definitely should not have done that to you in the first place. My job denied me the flexibility they promised with my schedule while I was going for my master's program. So I decided to maliciously comply by calling out of work every single morning just to spite my managers. Here's what happened. So I was in a supervisory role as a charge nurse, and I had worked in this position for about 3 years. I had great reviews and earned consistent raises and performance bonuses. I approached my managers and requested that they agree to a flexible schedule if I worked on my master's degree. I wasn't asking for time off, I just wanted them to adjust my schedule when it came time for my practical rotations. Now, they agreed, as they wouldn't be losing any productivity and would be gaining a nurse practitioner for the system. After about a year, I started the program, and it became apparent I was going to need to divorce my wife. We had been married for many years, and it was quite a blow. I called the employee assistance program and got some therapy that was very helpful. My managers also suggested that I apply for FMLA leave due to their concern for my mental health. And for that, I was very grateful. I had been working for this system for a number of years and had many hours of paid time off saved up. But I figured the FMLA leave would be a smart thing to be approved for, just in case court times were scheduled when I was working. Eventually, I was approved for up to 40 hours per week for a year. Well, fast forward, and about a year into my master's program, it became necessary for me to step down from my role as a charge and take on a staff nurse position. And when I did this, my main manager was livid. She took it personally and stopped talking to me or even greeting me. And initially, I was very hurt by this. As my practical rotations were about to start, I reminded my managers of their promise to be flexible with my schedule. They denied my request for flexibility and began to schedule me almost entirely for the times I would request off. At first, I was very frustrated and very hurt that they did this, but I remembered that I was approved for FMLA leave. Now, FMLA is a very special form of leave and it cannot be denied. So, since my managers were not keeping their promises, it was with great satisfaction that I began calling off every morning that I was needed for my rotations. I didn't give them any advance notice because I was not required to. It was also with even greater satisfaction when I learned that my managers began to have to cover my shifts themselves on occasion. And to top it all off, since I had PTO hours already saved up, I still got paid as well. I finished all of my rotations in this manner, and I took a job at a different system after I graduated. I worked at the new system for several years before I was hired back at my old system as a provider. And trust me, I love seeing the look on my old manager's face when I took my first shift at her hospital as a provider and not under her chain of command. Wow, the fact that your boss basically turned on you like that is so ridiculous. Like, they literally just flipped the script suddenly and was like, no, because you're stepping down, now I'm gonna punish you. Like, I cannot stand managers who act like that, and honestly, you did not deserve that. But it sounds like you got the ultimate revenge by coming back as like a provider that she can't mess with. And with that, along with your malicious compliance towards using your FMLA, I think that it's great to see that you came out on top considering all that you were up against. Am I the jerk for not telling my roommates that I'm their landlord? Because right now, they're tarnishing my good name. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 28-year-old female, and I got a job when I was 17 years old and lived at home saving as much as I could until I was 26 years years old, at which point I bought a small apartment for myself with a small mortgage. It has 2 rooms. One is bigger with an in-suite and the other is a single. I didn't want to live alone for safety reasons, so I posted about getting a roommate with them having the in-suite. I got lots of messages, but when people found out that I was the landlord, they usually just left the conversations. I was very upfront that I wanted someone who was clean, tidy, organized, quiet, and a non-drinker. And my sister said that was probably sending a toxic message since I was also the landlord. So I stopped mentioning that, and very shortly afterwards, I found some people. Now, these people are a really nice engaged couple. The woman is 29 years old and the man is 28. And although I wouldn't say we're like close best friends, we are rather friendly. We have dinner together sometimes, and the living situation has been really nice. The rent was on the cheaper side on average for our area, and we even split bills, including streaming and the internet. But here's the thing, they did not know that I was the landlord. Now, I will fully admit, I can be a little strict. I hate things being messy, disorganized, and loud, and especially since I'm the owner, I want things sorted quickly just to avoid any damages. So a few times I have scheduled checks to get things rolling if they're being pushed aside, and mentioned that I might have to complain if things weren't tidied up properly. Recently, the girl had some health issues and has been working less, which means they have been struggling on rent payments. Again, I don't need their money to pay off the mortgage, but I have been using it to help give me some extra money. I decided to come clean and mention I would cut the rent payments fully until she got better and found stable work again. They were nice about it and took the deal until she got better. They then moved about last month, and I went on the search for new roommates. Well, they started trashing me to everyone they knew. They would say how I lied about being the landlord, how I was a strict jerk, and how I was trying to steal their money in a cost of living crisis to pay off my debts. Word has finally gotten around, and I've actually stopped taking inquiries. Some of my friends and family members are saying I was a jerk and should have been honest about it from the get-go, and others are saying that I didn't owe them that kind of information, and I ended up doing them a favor. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to believe. Okay, honestly, in my opinion, I think the way you went about doing this is very misleading, and it really only benefits you. Like, the fact that you didn't disclose this to them ahead of time is really not okay. So yes, I definitely think you're the jerk. Like, I don't know about you, but I would personally really want to know if I'm living with my landlord, because that's literally going to change the dynamic completely. Now, that doesn't excuse them like tarnishing your name and saying all these awful things, because it sounds like you were not that bad in the first place. But legitimately, in my opinion, I really think this should have been discussed ahead of time, because if I was in their shoes, I would feel incredibly tricked, and that just doesn't seem fair in the slightest. My entitled landlord refuses to fix anything in our apartment, leaving me and my roommates without a water heater or even a working fridge for over a year. But after all my other roommates moved out, I decided that I was gonna get some revenge, and as a result of winning my case against him, this entitled jerk was forced to fix everything wrong with the apartment, and I was given 9 months of free rent at his place. And I've honestly never felt better about getting back at anybody in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I need to give you some minor details. I need to start off by noting that I spent about 2 decades working in security. During that time, I worked many different types of security in many different locations. The one that matters for this story was the time I spent in the rental housing tribunal in a major city, and I worked as kind of a bailiff. For those not knowing what that is, think of a courtroom as you'd see on TV, but with less formality, and an adjudicator instead of a judge. They functionally are the same thing to landlords and tenants, but they definitely aren't the same thing. This place exclusively deals with landlord and tenant disputes, and is the only place to resolve them. Now, it's important to note that I wasn't a bailiff and it wasn't a court, but these terms most accurately describe the situation and my place in it. For 2 years, I worked at the rental housing tribunal, and it was early in my time in security when I was about 20 years old. Being as it was a major city, the sheer number of cases I sat through was beyond my ability to count. I saw everything there was to see. So because of that, no one is capable of surprising me with a story, because I've seen them all in detail. As a side duty of mine, I was meant to ensure all parties had copies of all evidence being presented. So I did a lot of photocopying, and I always read and inspected everything I copied to ensure that nothing got cut off or made illegible. By the time I stopped working there, I probably knew the way everything worked well enough to be an adjudicator myself. Now, obviously not really, but I'm certainly in no need of a lawyer either, should I ever have need to go there. I also had intimate knowledge of how the system worked beyond the actual rules. Like, for example, adjudicators would always give a little leeway to anyone representing themselves ourselves over someone who had a lawyer, or how upset adjudicators would get when a party was speaking out of turn. Like seriously, don't do that. Now with that bit of detail out of the way, I need to skip forward almost a decade. I left the city and I'm now in a fairly large town in the same province. So that means we have the same tenant laws. I have a few roommates in a decently sized townhouse, and we all get along really well, but there is only one problem. Only I can write checks, and our paydays don't line up. So I'm the one who pays the rent, and I usually can't do it on the first because my roommates don't usually all pay in time. We advise the landlord we might be a day or two late, but we'll always have it by the third at the very latest. Well, they have no problem with this at all, and I spoke to them myself. For about a year, this works just fine. There were no complaints from the landlord, because even if we were often a day or two late, we always ended up paying. We're also fairly quiet and we don't damage the property. We are nearly model tenants. Now, I do not actually have any idea why, but one day this all completely changed. I suspect a different person in the company started overseeing the region because one day, suddenly, we get a summons to the rental housing tribunal on the 2nd of the month, all because they claim we failed to pay rent. Now, this doesn't actually lead to a case because we paid the same day, but now we have to pay the application fee the landlord paid in order to serve the summons. I complained to the neighbor who was also the superintendent, and eventually I heard back that their contract at the company was now demanding first of the month with no exceptions. Well, that really didn't work for us, so we would probably have to pay that fee over 20 times over the next 2 years. I could have gone to tribunal over it, but we were technically without a leg to stand on, and I knew it. Maybe if I went a few times, I could probably ding them for really bothering us, but I don't have time for that, and my roommates just don't care. After being split between us all, the fee wasn't enough deterrent to change our behavior, so we accepted it. Now, here's the thing. If this was the only issue, I would not be posting this story online. At around the same time, the rent leeway vanished, as did the mandatory maintenance. Now, I'm not going to list everything that went wrong and wasn't fixed, but I think you'll get a decent idea at the end. But you know what? We suffered through it. We were all working too many hours at awful pay to be able to actually do anything about it, so we adapted. But after about 2 years, it finally broke. Everybody except for myself up and moved for various reasons within a 4-month period. I'm not going into any details on my roommates at all because things kind of exploded for a couple of reasons outside of this, and I just don't think there's any reason to dig up any of that. Now, I had been saving up a while and was able to quit my job without having to immediately get another one, so I suddenly had a lot of free time. I didn't want to stay and pay the rent by myself or have to find new roommates that I could live with, and with my experience in the rental housing tribunal, I knew that I had the landlord exactly where I wanted them, so I went for them. I stopped paying rent, and annoyingly, I didn't get a summons the first month, but I did the second, so I decided to go. But I showed up with a meticulously documented plethora of evidence, all detailing the failure to maintain the property and entering the property without formal notice. I had a copy for the landlord and a copy for the adjudicator. I knew from experience that technically you're supposed to give the other party the evidence before the tribunal, but I also knew about the leeway an adjudicator gives to those who represent themselves. So I didn't give the landlord any evidence until our case came up. This was 100% a total ambush. And that's exactly what they argued. They said that they were being ambushed, but the adjudicator just dismissed the case. He dressed me down a little and told me to file my own summons as I should have done. This was all just petty revenge, by the way. The landlord and the lawyer drove 3 hours to get there for literally nothing. But trust me, this was worse than nothing. Fast forward and I filed my own summons, and the big day finally shows up. It's been about 4 months of me not paying rent at this point, and I'm prepared to deal with the consequences if I lose, but I just don't think that I'm going to lose. This entire thing could not have been better. I had about 20 to 30 pages of evidence, while also providing over 20 photos, and they had nothing. They had no actual defense for our water heater being out for 6 months, or for us not having a fridge for over a year. And that's only mentioning 2 severe issues. Their entire defense rested on us being late for rent, which actually worked against them once that led to the adjudicator learning how many times we'd pay the application fee, and the lies that had no evidence to support them. They even talked over me a few times, and I saw in his eyes the one time I opened my mouth to protest during their turn to speak, but forced myself to shut up with every gram of willpower I had, so only a squeak came out, with the adjudicator thankfully respecting me. But he had no respect for the landlord. I had won on every possible front, but the only question was how much. Well, it was way more than I had ever seen in my life. I got 9 months of free rent, and the landlord was ordered to have everything fixed weeks before the next month was over, or I would get even more. I gave notice I was leaving at the end of the 8th month, and I left at the end of the 9th. Because the landlord had never renewed the lease, I didn't have to give him the 3-month notice the lease specified. Now, if you want a figure to put it to, I basically got $13,000 judgment in my favor, which is adjusted for inflation and rounded. I also made the landlord and lawyer drive 3 hours twice only to lose. The landlord's face was very red by the end of it, and I seriously thought he was gonna have a heart attack. Now, just to clarify, I want to say that there are good landlords out there. I really do know that. My time at the rental housing tribunal was eye-opening. For every bad landlord, there were like 10 bad tenants easily. But regardless, I am so glad I was able to get revenge on my landlord. Wow, the landlord in this situation definitely messed with the wrong person. Like literally, this guy had everything covered. He knew exactly what he was and wasn't gonna do, and he had everything lined up to basically take down that lawyer and the landlord. Like they literally had no case and they knew it. Like I cannot imagine living in a house without a water heater or not even having a working fridge for like over a year. That is seriously not fair for you or your roommates, and that really should have been taken care of like way sooner. So good for you for putting your landlord in his place, because this guy absolutely did not know what was coming. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.